What's up, guys? Thanks for checking out the 1-0 podcast. Just wanted to come on here and tell you guys some unfortunate news before we get into today's episode. So I forgot to turn this thing on before I recorded this one, but I just didn't. It was already 20 minutes, and if I just did it again, I'd feel like I'd be repeating myself, and it just wouldn't be as good. But anyways, wanted to come in and tell you guys that if the audio quality sounds a little bit different or not as good, it's still pretty decent with the Mac mic. You can understand everything and all that good stuff. So yeah, not super bad. Just not the Jesus mic itself, the Shure SM7B. Hopefully that didn't make a lot of excess noise because I couldn't really pull it up there. But anyways, catch you guys here in a little bit on the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back into another episode of 1-0. I'm so glad you guys are joining me today. I honestly didn't think we'd be together for another time this week rather. Because I was just, 3 episodes. We'd already talked. There had been a lot of stuff going on, but there was a Spurs game, so we'll talk about that. And then also there'll be 2 bowl games in specific that I'll talk about. I didn't really get to watch too much of Georgia State and Western Kentucky, so if that's something that you're looking for, unfortunately, we won't be able to talk about it today, but we will talk about the other 2 games today. Or I think there might have been one other game. Maybe it was just those 2, but we'll talk about UTSA and Louisiana, which I got to see the whole majority of. I hope you guys did too. And then we'll talk about Liberty and Coastal, which if you weren't watching your favorite NBA team and you're a big college football person, you were watching that game. And if you've been watching this season the whole year, like a lot of us have, it kind of seems like BYU Coastal, that game was a candidate for game of the year. This might have topped it. And then on top of that, when you're watching, you're seeing ESPN put all the graphics up of when they were big FCS rivals. A lot of those went to overtime and stuff like that, and we just got another part of that tonight, and it was arguably a game of the year, definitely a candidate for sure. And then we'll also dive in to the Spurs game. They're 2-0, guys. If you're a Spurs fan, you've been watching, you're probably excited about that. We'll check that out for sure. But to just be completely honest with you guys, as I always will be, the Liberty game and the Spurs game, I was watching both of them at the same time. So, if the analysis isn't as in-depth, you can correct me on that in the comments. I want to have a conversation with you guys. You can hit me up on Twitter, at Jude McClaren and all that stuff. But we'll get into that later, but I'll do my best. We'll do our best to talk about it together with all the knowledge that I have from trying to pay attention to both of those games at the same time. But what we do have total information on today is UTSA and Louisiana. Watched all of that. I hope you guys did as well. And, going into that third quarter, after the fumble was recovered by the Cajuns and they scored easily, and then they were able to get a stop, and it looks like, they might go up 31-7 to start this, in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter, they could, go on a 14-0 run. I thought the game was over, but then UTSA forces a fumble. And once that happens, they go on a 17-0 run. They tie the thing up in the fourth quarter, even though there's a stop at the start of the fourth quarter by Louisiana to force a field goal, which was huge for them to, not give up the lead, because that would have been just a major momentum shift. And I don't know if they would have been able to come back from that. But after that, the Cajuns were able to just regroup. Elijah Mitchell, Trey Regis, both 8. 7 to 9 yards per carry for both of those guys. They're going to be seniors. It's going to be interesting to see if them and Levi Lewis come back for another year. I could see Trey Regis and Elijah Mitchell going to the NFL because they probably have a shot. Levi Lewis, I'm not so sure. If you're a Cajun fan or just a group of 5 fan who's been watching the Raging Cajuns for a long time, tell me what you think about Levi Lewis and his potential NFL draft status. I don't really see him as being, an NFL guy. Maybe in, the XFL next year with Dwayne Johnson. It'd be awesome if he was. So I could see him coming back for another year, taking advantage of that like De'Aaron King did for Miami. That's another little side note. I was, not to necessarily say surprised, but it was interesting. I probably would have expected him to just move on to the NFL, but hey, he's coming back for another year, so that's going to make Miami more interesting for another season. But it also makes sense when you think about De'Aaron King, because if you've watched De'Aaron King, like a lot of us have, you can tell that there's still some things that he has to work on throwing the ball. He's obviously a dynamic playmaker. He's from Houston. He reminds me a lot of Greg Ward, and he might end up being a receiver in the NFL. But if he really wants to be a quarterback, hey, why not hone your skills and really prove yourself for another season at Miami and try to compete for a national title or an ACC title. Trevor Lawrence is gone. I still think that Clemson and even North Carolina are better than Miami, but I mean, hey, why not? If you can just improve your tape and really convince people that you can be a quarterback going into next year and that draft, then more power to him, man. He's taken advantage of the rule that was in this year, and that was really the first star player that we've seen take advantage of the rule so far. But going back to UTSA and Louisiana, really after that, Louisiana goes on almost a 14-0 run. They walk down the field and score. They get a stop, and really those last, I think the most important plays in this game. There were a lot of important plays and important penalties. Especially that fumble at the start of the third quarter. That was a very important play. But the three most important plays, in my opinion, from watching. You guys, if you have a different opinion and you were watching, tell me in the comments once again. But for UTSA, from what I saw, is you have that fumble at the start of the third quarter, which boosts the momentum for the rest of the game. And then on 3rd and 7 and 4th and 7, Frank Harris just, unfortunately for Roadrunner fans, throws it in the dirt. And that was really the end of it because, I mean, the way that Louisiana runs the ball, I mean, they ran the ball at will on Iowa State. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you guys, if you watched that game against Iowa State like a lot of us did, pretty easy to tell that the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns, even for the past couple years, have just been, I mean, three-headed monster at running back. They did the same thing this year. With number 21, I forget his last name, but they inserted him after the senior graduated last year, and I'm blanking on both of those names. So once again, enlighten me in the comments if you'd like. But yeah, I mean, they're just gonna run it down your throat, and you give them a minute, 2 minutes, they're gonna run the clock out, and they did. So that was game number 1 that I was able to watch. Still a ton of fun that we were able to see there because of the fact that, you know, it looked like the Cajuns were gonna pull away. UTSA came back, and then the Cajuns ultimately just took care of business. And that is kind of like the Liberty-Coastal Carolina game. Obviously, it was a lot crazy for us when we were sitting at home watching. But, I mean, once again, it feels like after one team came back, ties things up, even though it was at a very different moment in the game and a very different scenario for the Liberty Flames. But those guys ended up winning the game like probably they should have, just like Louisiana did, the team who really outplayed him, even though they gave the other team life for a little bit, came back and got the W. But let's just go into that Liberty-Coastal Carolina game. I think, you know, I'm a Sun Belt guy because I go to a school that's in the Sun Belt, and I watch a lot of their stuff. I went to the media day a couple years ago, and point is, Sun Belt is really fun for me. So I had seen Grayson McCall. If you guys had watched, you had seen Grayson McCall against BYU and some other teams as well, like that Coastal Carolina game, or excuse me, the Louisiana game, right? Those two teams in that 30-27 game was phenomenal as well. But the way that he came out in this game, and specifically late in that second half, made clutch plays when his team needed it, was the only reason that they were even anywhere near overtime. And now you think about it, and I mean, well, they wouldn't be trying to run. I don't know. Maybe Liberty would still try to run the clock out, because you look back at that extra point when they tried to go for 2, when it was 19-24, and we see them not convert there. I mean, imagine if Liberty runs that same play and they're trying to just run the clock out for a little bit longer. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they just try to score a touchdown at that point. I don't know what Hugh Freeze would do. Maybe if he was down by 1 point, I don't know how much that changes the situation, but think about how important that extra point was as well, with the game going into overtime at 34-34. But let's just go to the end of the game. I'm sure you guys watched, if you're tuning in, or you heard about it. Why is Hugh Freeze not taking a knee there? Just take the knee. And I know they kind of took a knee, but I mean, it was just so funny. I saw a tweet, and you guys may have seen it too if you're on Twitter, and it was Team A tries to run the clock out by not taking a knee. Team B tries to push the other player into the end zone at the end of the game to like give themselves a chance. That's what Coastal was trying to do. They're like, we can't just let them run the clock out. Let's just give them the touchdown, and then let's try to go down the field and score with 41 seconds. We have a better chance doing that than we do with, you know, a 19-yard field goal on the 1-yard line with 3 seconds left. That's like lined up perfectly. And then Team A, who is trying to run the clock out, tries to prevent himself from scoring a touchdown. You can see his feet stop. If you're watching, we saw his feet stop right before the goal line, and then they strip the ball, and the ball falls out literally like inches away from the goal line, and Coastal recovers. But and then Coastal, and then obviously we saw Liberty win. But then on the first possession of overtime, we see Coastal play the best defense they have. They force a field goal. You're like, okay, they're about to run some option looks from the 25-yard line. Their offense has been rolling. They're about to go down the field, score, win this thing. It's going to be magic. They run 3 straight pass plays. We see Coastal run 3 straight pass plays. So play calling was the death of both teams in this situation, even though we see Liberty ended up getting the dub. But it's like, why wasn't Coastal at least, on one of those? Okay, maybe you try for the big shot on first down. They were very close there. And then on second down, okay, let's run some option looks, try to make this a third and manageable. Maybe even get it to a 4th and 1 where we'll go for it. But no, none of that. Just 3 straight pass plays. And I mean, look, Grayson McCall had made some great throws, and I mean, had made some phenomenal plays. And on that, even the 2-point conversion, had done it with his feet to tie things up. But just 3 incompletions, and then the field goal's blocked. And I could tell, I thought actually, so I didn't have a good feeling before either of those field goals. I don't know what you guys thought, but before the Liberty one, I was like, oh, this is about to happen. And then he drains it. And then I'm like, before the Coastal kick, I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good. It seems like I think we might see the football gods repay Liberty here on this one, especially after the ice timeout. I was like, oh, this doesn't look good for Coastal. And then they get blocked. And of course, you guys can't know that I actually felt that. But I mean, that's what I'm telling you. So you got to take my word for it. But when that happened, it was like, yep, this was the team that really deserved to win, and they ended up winning the game. So good on Liberty, man. I hope that we get to see that game again because, I mean, Liberty and Coastal going at it in the years to come would be super fun to just see more of those because this is how their games have been, like, forever. That was what we saw when ESPN was putting up all the graphics. I know I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I mean, a bunch of overtime games. There were like triple-double overtime games with them. I mean, even just games in regulation that ended super close. They're all like 3 one-point games. So that's just what we get out of Liberty and Coastal, and what a game. So don't really have too many other thoughts on that one. I know there was the beginning. I mean, it was really that Coastal came back. So we saw a lot of fight from Coastal, then got gifted overtime, and then the football gods said, no. So the football gods giveth, the football gods taketh away. That is the story of the Cure Bowl this year. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the San Antonio Spurs, who are 2-0 against a good Raptors team. I know that the Raptors lost some pieces, I'm pretty sure, this year. And speaking of which, I'm here, and I have a friend. His name is Ryan Galloway. You guys may know him from the Splash podcast. Go check out all the stuff on Strive Network and check out the Splash with him and Spencer. He's not a big fan of the Beach Chickens. He's not a big fan of them. I don't know. I think it's just me telling him that they're good, and then he's like, no, they're not. But he didn't like it. He didn't like it when I told him that Coastal Carolina has more 11-win seasons than Texas does either. But with that being said, not saying Coastal is better than Texas, but I don't know. I mean, Iowa State beat. Who did Iowa State beat? Oh, they didn't beat Louisiana. And then Coastal beat Louisiana, and Iowa State beat Texas. But anyways, different games. Probably if Texas and Coastal Carolina play, Texas wins. But just food for thought. Anyways, sorry for that little side note. But, I mean, there's G5. It really, I mean, I feel bad for Cincinnati. As much as I like to say a lot about the G5, a lot of us true college football fans that watch every single game, like, and you watch G5, you can appreciate a lot of it. And you can realize that a lot of these teams can compete with the Power 5, especially teams like the Pac-12. There's a lot of blurred lines now. If you look at the American and the Pac-12, I mean, sometimes you can be like, okay, the American is better than the Pac-12. Sometimes even these Sun Belt teams we've seen look better than the Pac-12. And maybe I'm just going crazy. Maybe you guys can tell me something different. But when you watch some of these games, that's how I feel. Maybe it's just been down for the Pac-12 for a while, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, talking about the Spurs. So Spurs fans, we're here. We're 2-0 against a good Raptors team. DeJounte Murray got his first ever career triple-double on a night where he shot like butt, but it didn't matter. And this is what I wrote down when I'm watching this game. I'll go through the notes that I had like I did with you guys last time. But when we watch this game, we're seeing DeJounte just, once again, after he has a good scoring game where he's, shooting well, has a good shooting percentage, being just efficient, we see him go, let's see, what order the actual numbers? 5 for 15 and, 11 points, 0 for 3 on threes. But you know what he does other than that? Well, he actually didn't have a steal in this game, but still 10 rebounds, 10 assists. So while this is still the same DeJounte Murray that we're seeing where he can't really have consistently, back-to-back games with like 20 points, I mean, maybe. This is early in the season, so all this was with a grain of salt. But what we've seen so far, I'm going off concrete, that's what we've got. This could very well change. There's 70 games left. But still an improvement nonetheless, because on the night that he's not being able to be consistent shooting the ball, he gets his first career triple-double. He gets 10 rebounds, 10 assists. So, I mean, it's like, even with him being the same player that's inconsistent, that inconsistency is still elevated this year. So, shout out to DeJounte for getting his first career triple-double. I mean, and imagine if he just makes 5 more shots, goes 10 for 15. That's like 21 points. That would have been so beautiful. That's all we need from DeJounte, and then this isn't a game. It would still be a close game, but it wouldn't be. That would be 10 more points. So, anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But DeMar DeRozan definitely looked way better than he did in the first game. I know he didn't score as many points, didn't have as many rebounds, didn't have as many assists, but played better defense, had 2 steals, and was 3 for 4 from 3 and was pulling up with confidence. What is this? Is Chip England fixing DeMar DeRozan's shot? I think that's what we might be seeing as Spurs fans. I don't know about you guys, but, you let me know. Because 10 for 17, and when he was pulling up, I was like, oh, this is in rhythm. He's just taking it. They're giving it to him, and he was making it. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, now that we've talked about DeMar, and I've always said, and I'm sure you Spurs fans have always kind of felt, look, DeMar is pretty good for us. Not a bad thing, right? Let's talk about LaMarcus Aldridge. You see my face if you're watching the YouTube video. 5 for 14, 1 for 5 from 3. I'll give him 6 rebounds and 4 assists, 12 points. Patty Mills had 21 points. Lonnie Walker, 6 for 14, 2 for 8 on threes, 14 points. Keldon Johnson, 5 for 15, 0 for 3 on threes, 9 rebounds, 12 points. Devin Vassell, 3 for 5, 1 for 1 on threes, 5 rebounds, 7 points. If you're listening to the audio version, I'm sorry for the pause, but if you go and watch our YouTube videos on Strive Network, you can see me just blink there. Because that's about 3 guys who played better than him. And guys who had bad shooting nights still contributed more, like Keldon Johnson, 9 rebounds. Like, why are we even... It's 2 games, but I'm at the same place I was in the game before. If you're a Spurs fan, you're probably at the same place that you were before. Maybe you're a little bit more optimistic than me. But we're seeing LaMarcus Aldridge stink things up. That's what we saw in this game. We'll have to see what happens for the rest of the season. But DeMar really carried for the victory tonight. Obviously, Patty, 8 of 9 overall shooting. So Patty looks, he really looks in rhythm. If he can be like that, that's going to be huge as well. We also saw a little bit of Trey Lyles, just came in for 4 minutes, shot a 3, drained it, looks better than the preseason. It's just funny that we're not playing him, but we'll have to see what happens. But overall, this went down to the wire, contested Fred VanVleet just enough for him to miss, and we're able to pull out the dub against a really good team. Let's see who the Spurs got next. The Spurs have, looking at their schedule, they have the Pelicans. So once again, another winnable game, and then you got to go play the Lakers. Or actually, you come back home and play the Lakers. So that will be really, I feel like, the first test. Look, theoretically the Spurs could lose against the Pelicans. That's very possible. But if they keep playing like they've been playing, I think that they can beat the Pelicans. And I mean, it's a long season, so all of this is just early season stuff. I mean, these games are really insignificant, but the fact that you beat that Grizzlies team, which isn't as good as this Raptors team, and you're able to pull out a win against the Raptors, I mean, that's huge. And Derek White, once again, not playing. So, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see what the Spurs team looks like. It's gonna be interesting to see what we see from a fully loaded Spurs team as Spurs fans. But with that being said, I think that, let's see, the 27th. Oh, they play again tomorrow night. Wow. Well, you'll probably get another video podcast, something from me, when that game happens, because I didn't realize that was literally tomorrow. So we'll have another Spurs game tomorrow with a review of that game that'll tell us a lot about that. And that will be very interesting going into that game on Wednesday against the Lakers. So if the Spurs can start the season 3-0 and win another one tomorrow in a back-to-back for 2 days rest against the Lakers, that would be huge. We'll really get to see, I think, who the Spurs are in this next game, or it'll be that Lakers game. But I think that the teams have just gotten progressively better that they're facing. It'll be another challenge against the Pelicans tomorrow night in New Orleans. So they're going to have to get up and travel tomorrow. But still, good look for the Spurs. Let's see. We got some other bowl games coming up. I don't think they start until Tuesday. Let's see here. Yeah, don't start until Tuesday. We'll get Oklahoma State, Miami, and Texas, Colorado. So we'll have the Power 5 games coming up this week. Then we'll get a bunch of other games on Wednesday as well. Florida, Oklahoma, Iowa, Missouri, Wake Forest, Wisconsin. I mean, just even more. It's really getting the bowl season. And then on Friday, I didn't even realize this. On Friday, we have the college football playoff. It's college football playoff week in about, let's see, well, when this is released, it'll be college football playoff week. So rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. It's bowl season, college football playoff week, the beginning of the NBA, a bunch of good stuff. Follow all the stuff from myself and the Strive Network at the Strive Network on Instagram, at Jude McClaren on Twitter. 1-0 podcast. You've gone 1-0. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys later.